So 10 years ago, more or less, I started working in this field and building corporate programs for startups, working with accelerators, working with incubators, and so on, and studying everything that is connected to this word. And everything that is connected to this word is about creating new products and bringing new products to the market. So, which is the essence of innovation. So the word innovation actually means building new products and bringing to the market. Creativity is a prerequisite of innovation, of course, because you have to create something to innovate. But there is no innovation if we don't have something that we bring to the market and we sell it. So I always use this very strict definition of innovation. Otherwise, everything is innovation. And you know, today is very trendy that everyone claims that they are doing innovation, whatever is the thing that they are doing. Okay. In the last 3 years, I also start teaching at the university this kind of things, and now I'm moving to training which is a thing that I definitely love. So, what are we going to talk today? We are going to talk today about how startups create and launch new products. And why is this relevant for you? This is relevant, I think, for at least 2 reasons. The first one is that your services fit in this process. So whether you are communicating a product, selling a product, designing a product, you are going to help companies along this path. The second one, as Jose said yesterday, is that you can productivize some of your project, of your services, and you can create new products and eventually new business. So it makes sense to have a better understanding of how the process works. Now, there are a lot of elements that comes into the equation of creating new, successful, or amazing products. I want to point your attention to 3 elements. I will not talk about the team because it is quite obvious. You need a great team to create great products, but you know, you need a great team to do a lot of things. So we're not going into this. We're going into this other elements. These other elements as that there are patterns. So today, if you analyze products from startups or successful startups, you can see that there are certain patterns that are emerging, that emerge in general. The second one is that they all follow an experimental process. So it's not that I have an idea, I make it happen, and it works automatically. Unfortunately, it is not like that. And the third element is that they use consistently a marketing stack, a technology stack, and the technology stack is becoming more and more important. So let's start with the patterns. Let me do this so that sorry. Right, so that I have a vision on. So 5 patterns. First pattern is that an amazing product simplify a job to be done. So the job to be done is a concept that was introduced by Clayton Christensen. It's one of the major academics studying innovation. It works at the Harvard University. So what happens here is that, you know, in general, we want to do something. It is not necessarily a problem. It is an objective that we want to achieve, and there's a journey to get there. And so a good product generally does a thing like that, simplify the process to get to the job. And considering that in every job, there's the customer, there are actors that have an influence on this job, on your ability to accomplish your objective, and there are products that you can use. So at a certain point, Christians say, we hire products to get job done. Okay, so, and the job is the progress that we are looking for to get to the objective. So let's do a very simple example, Uber. So, because there was, Fernanda was talking about Uber yesterday. So the experience of taking a taxi is, in another city, I have to find the number of the radio taxi, I have to call the taxi, I don't know which taxi will arrive, I have to get to destination, and I have to pay the taxi. Does he accept credit cards? Will he fool me? Will he cheat on me? And so on. So if you think Uber, you have an app that simplifies all this process, because you are in control, as Fernanda said, but you can pay, you can rate, you are in control of the travel, and so on. So it really simplifies the job to be done, and the job to be done is not to get a taxi, it's to get to a destination. Okay, so this is one of the opportunity. And you can solve this job also with other applications. For instance, City Mapper. You want to use public transportation, same problem. Which is the underground that I have to take? How long will it take to get there, and so on? You get City Mapper, and you have Uber for public transportation, and or now Google Maps does exactly the same thing. So first of all, you have to think, how do I simplify the job to be done? Which are the main pain points in the customer experience that I have to afford, where I can act? Which are the pain points that I can eliminate? And, you know, if you analyze successful products like Nest, like Deliveroo, you name it, you will see that many of these products does just that, simplify a job to be done. And there was a nice, I don't remember the name of the company, but it is an InsurTech. So, and on the home page, so they provide new kind of insurance. And on the home page, it is written, we didn't start a company in this field because we like insurances. So, which is exactly the mindset that sometimes I've spotted something that doesn't work, and I'm creating a company around it. The second element is that this product have a very, very clear positioning. Positioning is the location that you find in the mind of your customer. So they're clearly positioned in the mind of your customer. And when I mean your customer, I mean a very specific segment, because there are no startups that start addressing a mass market. Every startup starts addressing a very specific niche or a specific segment. Even very successful products like Facebook started addressing a specific niche. In that case was the Ivy League university, and then all the universities. And I remember I was not able to subscribe to Facebook because I didn't have a university email in the very early days of Facebook. So from Italy, I was not able to subscribe and to see what was happening in Facebook, or what was this new social network. And for instance, products like Uber have a very, very good positioning. And if you think a thing like the Segway, it is a great invention actually, but not a great innovation, because they did not find the right positioning in the mind of the people. Because if you look for the Segway on the internet, you find questions like, can I take it to my car? So what does it happen if I use it in public transportation? Can I bring it to a bus? Can I, where do I charge it? And so on. So it is not very clear. This was intended for urban transportation, to solve the problems of urban transportation. It didn't fit a specific location inside the mind of the customers to buy them. And in fact, today they're used for tourism, so for tours. Great products generally reinvent business models, or better, they create another perspective on an existing business model. This is a very important thing. When you do innovation, you need to start from changing your point of view on something. One of the ways to create new things is changing the point of view and ask yourself, what if I do these things in this other way instead of doing it as everybody is doing it right now? And you, for instance, very simple example, so I will not talk only about digital products. I will try to talk also about stuff that you can touch. So that's the 1 million, the $1 shave club. And that's, you know, probably you know it's a package with all you need to shave, and it's shipped to you. So, which is the change in the point of view is that traditional companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, you name it, they don't have an idea who's the consumer that is buying their products, because they sell the products to the distribution, to the retailers. And in this case, I say, okay, we completely change the dynamic. So it's the retailer that acquires the customers. Then, of course, the brand does the marketing campaign, build the brand reputation, whatever you want. But at the end, if you don't find the product on the shelf, you cannot buy it. If the product is not positioned the right way on the shelf, you will not buy it. So the power is to the retail chain. Now, what happens if I acquire directly the consumers online and I ship the product via email? I completely change the way the industry works. I completely switch to another paradigm. And you know, Spotify did the same thing. I don't know if you remember the time where we were buying music, buying a single piece of music. That means it could be an LP, or with iTunes buy a single tune. And the mechanic of paying the artist was straightforward. Now, one copy, you get 8 cents, 10 cents of the revenue. In this case, it's different, because in this case, I will pay you every time someone listens to your music. So you have to change the way royalties are paid to artists and the industry. And you have the industry to accept this shift of paradigm. But it works. It works because Shopify simplifies the overall experience for the customer. It's not anymore about owning and building a library of songs, but it's about building playlists, or subscribe to playlists and listen to playlists. And finally, amazing products are hyper customized. So we, in the last 10, 15 years, we moved from mass market to customized products. So wanting to do the example of entertainment, we moved from mass television. So at a certain point, we were able to decide what we were going to watch in television with blockbusters and other services. And then it moved everything digital, and it is hyper customized. So I don't have to choose, because I have a recommendation system that will tell me you are 95 compatible with this kind of product. And when I have a population, a certain segment of customers, a certain number of customers that is 99 compatible with a certain type of entertainment, I can produce entertainment exactly for them. And I know everything, because I know which are the episodes that they watch, which are the episodes that they skipped, which are the episodes that they move forward, and so on. So I have a lot of information. There's a proliferation of data. Now it's very, very easy to do this kind of examples with digital stuff. But first, remember that recommendation system started with Amazon. So the popularity of collaborative filtering technologies started with Amazon, so with physical products, with books. Second, that Netflix started as a physical company because they physically shipped DVDs to consumers. So you rented DVDs. There are some words that are more difficult to pronounce. They physically shipped DVDs to customers, and they move all digital. And it can be done with groceries. Okay, so have you ever heard of Blue Apron, HelloFresh, all this kind of stuff? So it is not anymore about going to the supermarket and buying ingredients, but they will ship a box with 3 recipes for 2 or 4 persons, and everything is measured. So you don't get 500 grams of pasta, you get 200 grams of pasta, 1 zucchini, and a pinch of salt, and whatever it is. And that's a completely shift of paradigm when you think about this, and the amount of data that you can gather thanks to this kind of model is enormous, because you are in a situation where if I am in the industry, if I am Barilla, I know that in a certain neighborhood of Rome, I will sell a certain amount of pasta, and that there are certain formats of pasta that are more popular than other formats of pasta. In this case, but I don't know what are they going to cook with that pasta. I can imagine that if in Rome they buy rigatoni, they will probably do carbonara or amatriciana, but can be whatever. In this case, I know exactly what are they eating. Okay, so it changes completely the perspective on the relationship with the consumers, and all the values is in the data that I can collect about the consumption. So it dramatically changes the way physical product can reach the consumer. And of course, then you can mix. One day you want to cook, the other day I will ship you something cooked, and it can, because the job to be done is eat something, is not cooking, no? So the job to be done at the end is eat something. So you can fulfill the job in a number of ways. Now, the fifth thing is that there's no startup that thinks that they have the good idea from the beginning. So there is a process, because you first need to have a solution to a problem. And then you have to demonstrate that this solution can become a product, and then you have to demonstrate that this product can become a company. So very, very different phases. Okay, so it's not that I have an idea, I create a list of specifications for this idea of all the features that I want inside this thing, and I create a gorgeous plot of this amazing product that will be a blockbuster, and then I build it, and then I bring to the market, and then it is a success. It is not. It doesn't work like that. It is a progressive activity. You start from this idea, you start working on the idea, and understand if your idea is something that generates value for the customer, or is a fantasy, and if it can become a commercial product, so if it is an innovation, and if this commercial product can sustain a business. You can build a business around it, because it's not necessarily the case. let's take a company like Google. So on the left, you see all the failed experiments of Google of things that could have been a scalable product and of things that became a scalable product. And you probably recognize some of these things, like the idea of having a competitor for Skype or WhatsApp, the Google Talk into the email, and that then become the Hangout. So it's a YouTube product or something in the middle. And then Knoll was the competitor of Wikipedia. And of course, glasses. And there was an appliance that had to be sold to, it was supposed to be sold to companies for internal search, for Orkut, the social network, or Google+. I forgot to put Google+. That was quite an epic fail. Wave, another epic fail in building a social network. And on the other side, the very successful products of Google. But the mindset of this company is that we have to put a lot of things on the table and do a lot of experiments, because most of these experiments will fail and will die, and others will survive and will eventually become successful and scalable product, that can be commercialized on a user base large enough to be meaningful for a company like Google that make billions a year. Now, let's get deep into the experimental process, because this is the very important thing of creating a product and bringing it to the market. So this is traditional way of big companies to ideate, create, design, and bring product to the market, is that there will be someone in the strategic market that will think, we need this, and then we'll ask the research and development, can you develop something like that? And then this product will go to the operations and will become a product. And then there's the operational marketing, above, below the line, whatever you want. So all the activities that you do to say, hey, we have a fancy new product. And generally in the industry, in the traditional industry, this is a big launch, with fanfare and all this other stuff. And then there is sales that physically ship the product and sells the product, all the activities related to the last part of the journey. Then you collect information about how many products you have sold, and you go back to the strategic marketing, and the loop goes on. Now, the problem is that if you fail, sales start complaining with marketing, marketing start complaining with the operations start complaining with the R&D and with strategic marketing, because you have spent 2 years designing this product to bring it to the market, and it failed. So who's the responsible for this? This is becoming very, very inefficient, because you need to bring to the market an increasing number of products. So and at the same time, barriers to entry in every industry, barriers to entry have lowered dramatically. So all the things that companies generally think they are their assets, their competitive advantages, are becoming their competitive disadvantages. And we'll do 2 examples. These are 2 epic fails, but it can be, I've seen that in Rome, there's a slide with Colgate lasagna or Colgate, but in Italy it's Colgate. And the Orbits, and the Orbits was a drink with these bubbles inside, and it was sold, in the press release, it was just like a texturally enhanced alternative beverage. No? And you can imagine the process of the strategic marketing, working with Gartner's quadrants, magic quadrants, and trying to spot a place where to have a new category, and then say, I found a new category for beverages. it is the texturally enhanced alternative beverage. And then they have the research and development, you have to come out with this kind of things and so on, and then it failed, of course. And so this is, I think, a typical example of failure of something that works on paper, but it doesn't solve any problem to anyone. Energy drinks solve a problem to anyone. They have a you can put specific, and probably it was the same period of the energy drinks, this kind of drink, if I don't get wrong. It's in the 90s that when they became popular. The second one is the Hewlett-Packard touchpad with WebOS. Probably you never heard of this because it was really a supernova. And there was a certain point when Apple came out with the iPad, and so Hewlett-Packard said, we have to come out with a tablet, and you know what, we are going to do our operating system, which is the WebOS, which I mean, the reviews were not bad about it. And I can imagine why they did this, because they probably said to themselves, Apple doesn't own the corporate market. We will have a tablet for the corporate market and we will crush Apple. They will never get to the companies because we will have a product that's better than them, and we will bring to the corporate guys. And of course, the corporate guys started bringing iPads in the office instead of buying Hewlett-Packard products, and it disappeared. So the startup model, so is completely different from the corporate model, from this waterfall process where you start thinking about something, you start designing, and then you bring it to the market. And I think it is based on two main elements. The first one is what I call the progressive fit. I don't know, I'm not a native English, so I don't know if progressive the fit is really the right way to say it. I will check with someone. And the other thing is what I call the wander-learn loop, and I will explain them now. So the progressive fit is, as I said, there are three main steps. The first step is when you are ideating something. So you need to understand if your idea is something that helps a consumer to get a job done, okay, to achieve an objective, to get a result, or to solve a problem. So it's in the startup world, you have to solve problems. I think that problem is too narrow as a word. I prefer job, because not everything is a problem. And the second is the problem market fit. So your product, your idea can be shaped in a way that make it become a product that people want to buy. Okay, so people want to buy what you're doing. And in the startup lingo, they say the investor, when you have a prototype, when you have, where you are starting working on your idea, they ask you, what is the traction? So what's your traction? Generally, they always ask, do you have traction? So can you demonstrate that someone wants to pay a product that probably is not complete, is not the ideal product that you had in mind, but nevertheless, they want to buy it because the problem is so urgent that they're willing to buy something incomplete and imperfect instead of finding other solution. And the third one is the business market fit. So not every product can become a company, because a company is a complex thing, and it needs operation, it needs a lot of things. So it is not always true that a good product can become a sustainable company where revenues are more than costs. Okay? And now I will show you which are the methods and which are the techniques that are generally used by startups to go through these 3 steps. So the problem solution, problem market, and product market business. And in all these steps, there is this loop. It is very user-centric or customer-centric. So the basic idea in every step is that you have to learn. You have to learn if you are building a solution. You have to learn if this solution can become a product, and you have to learn if this product can become a company. So you start making hypotheses, and then you create experiments to test this hypothesis. And then these experiments goes to the potential customer, and you have the customer feedback. And then you learn. And once you have learned, you go back. And we have seen yesterday with Luis, I will go back with the lean startup model, of course. I will mention it right now. So this is the loop, and now we will see how this works in these 3 different phases. So problem solution fit. Here you have the designers. Okay, so if you at this stage, when you have an idea and you start working on the idea, it is very likely that you need people that have a specific competence in design thinking, prototyping, and so on. So, in every stage, there are professionals and consultants that have developed tools to do their things, and that they sell this knowledge and skills to corporations. So, in the first area, we can leverage all the knowledge that was created by design thinking, IDEO, Frog. Yesterday they used these methods extensively. So in this case, this is the typical representation of the design thinking process. Is that the first thing that you have to do is to empathize. That means that you have to understand which is the area that you're working in. So start confronting with your potential customers, observe them, interview them, gather qualitative data and information. So you're thinking you are, I don't know, doing an application to call taxi, okay? Which is not Uber, it is for regular taxi, which is the thing that they did in Germany. So when Uber was born in America, My Taxi was born in Germany, and of course Germans are more abide to the rules, so they say we will use regular taxi. And so what do you do at the beginning? So is there a need? Can I create value doing an application for this? And how do you know how you create value? You start observing people that call taxi and need to use a taxi. You start observing drivers. You start observing how the general things work. So you have an idea, a better idea of what's happening here. That's the empathize phase. Then you define your point of view. So once you have gathered all the information, all this information, you download all this information with Post-its, in workshops and so on, and you start defining your point of view. That's very important, because your solution is always a point of view. And another one with the same information can create a different product because they adopt another point of view. So be always aware that whatever you're doing, it is your point of view or your team point of view. And then you start ideating, and the emphasis of the design thinking process is about building stuff. So building paper prototypes, mock-ups, or prototypes are someone called them. And you have, you can have many different outcomes here. It depends what you're building. If it is a physical product or if it is an interface, you start drawing the interface with pens. It's not necessarily that you use a digital tool to do it, and so that you start understanding how your product works. And every time that you do something physical, you eliminate ambiguities, you eliminate misunderstanding, because if I tell you I saw this beautiful girl and I don't have anything, you think that this girl can be blonde, it can be red, it can be brown, it can be tall, it can be short, it can be whatever, because it's your idea of beautiful girl. So if I think we are going to do an app that does this, this, and this, you think that the app will, you create a mental image of this app. So, and my mental image is different from your mental image or from her mental image, simply because we have different experiences. So it is, the trick here is that we put everything, we materialize everything. We create something physical. So if we create something physical, the ambiguity tend to, the result tend to be less ambiguous. Now, if we compare, the product, and then I tested with consumer. So I have feedback from consumers. So I do physical tests. And then I learned something, and I go back and do another prototype until the point that I'm quite sure that what I am working on is meaningful for the people that is intended for. And if we put, my model of wonder experiment, customer feedback and learn, we see that, the wonder is the empathize phase, the experiment is the define, ideate, and prototype, and then test for the other two. Of course, in this case, the emphasis is on the experiment phase, because the design thinking is everything about experimenting. And you will see that this method that I will mention, even though they have the same basic structure of a feedback loop, they tend to have an emphasis on one of the points. That depends on the maturity of the product. Now, once you have done this, you say, okay, now I have a prototype. I have something that it looks like it's meaningful. Okay, let's see if this can become a product. And we are in the startup world. No? So this is the lean startup. So the lean startup cycle is very simple. You have an idea, you build it. Of course, it emphasizes the fact that Eric Ries worked with digital products, so building it means coding it. It's not necessarily that way. You measure, you do tests, you measure, you collect data, you learn, and you iterate. Now, the problem with this loop is that it doesn't say anything about the idea. So how do you generate good ideas? And this is a very American approach. You know, the John Wayne startup, you say, I have an idea, I ship it, I put it into the world, and we see how it works. Reality is that if you do a disciplined process to generate ideas and to work your ideas, it's less risky in this phase. So in this phase, you will work with something that is more consistent and less risky than I just came up with this bright idea that could be a complete fantasy. Okay. Now again, the other main concept of the lean startup is that at the end you have a minimum viable product. So at the end of this process, you ship a minimum viable product and you test the minimum viable product. So the main difference, I believe, between a prototype and a minimum viable product is that you can create very partial prototype to understand very specific things. It's like when you build a car, you put the car in the wind tunnel. It's not necessarily that you have the engine inside the car or the entertainment system, because you're studying that specific aspect of the car, the aerodynamics. And if you do a test on the entertainment system of a car, it makes perfectly sense. You don't have to have the complete vehicle working. So when you are in the problem solution fit, you can have specific prototypes to test specific things. When you are here, you are building a product that is enough to understand if the value proposition is understandable for your consumer. Okay, so you are delivering the value to the consumer. Now, it doesn't matter how you deliver the value. So it doesn't matter if it is the final product that you were thinking. It could be something that you are simulating. For instance, there are a number of techniques to do the minimum viable product, but it depends on what you want to experiment, on what you want to test. So, but mainly you test two things when you do a minimum viable product. The first one is your vision. So if the consumer buy your vision, and you can do this with a Kickstarter campaign, you can do this with a landing page. Now, be aware, because you're just using storytelling. So you're telling the story of your product, but the user doesn't have the experience of your product. It's buying your story. What happens when you do a crowdfunding campaign, okay? But this is still a minimum viable product, because there are people that are willing to buy your idea and are putting money on it. Another category of minimum viable product is when you do experiments, when you want to test the customer experience. So, for instance, and these are the Wizard of Oz or the Mechanical Turk. So let's say Zappos. When Zappos started, basically they only had a landing page and a very small catalog, and actually all the shoes were the shoes that were for sale in the shop nearby. So every time an order arrived, the guy went to the shop, bought the shoes, packaged it, and shipped the shop. So he didn't build logistic all the company, because he wanted to test all the overall experience. Okay, so the people will choose this shoes. I will ship the shoes. Will be the sale successful, or will he return the shoes? How many times they will return the shoes, and so on. So he was selling the product, but the company was not set it up. Okay, so it was testing that the overall experience was working, and so on. So there are many. So every time that you use this technique to test the experience, but what is important is that you test the experience, but it's the real experience and is the real exchange for value, also in terms of economic transaction. Okay. Again, in this case, if we follow the Eric Ries model, of course, he put no emphasis on the part of wondering, of creating the idea, but just on, okay, you have an idea, you do experiments, and you collect data. So, if we have done the phase before, that makes sense, because we have built a lot of knowledge before doing this process. Third, finally, you have someone that people want to buy, and we come to another buzzword here. So we have seen design thinking, lean startup. The third buzzword is growth hacking. So I guess that your customers are now all in the growth hacking movement and try to understand what it means. Again, another loop. What's the basic idea here is, okay, I have found my first customers. How do I scale? I have found and I have probably found my first customers with very unscalable process, very manual, human intensive, and so on. How do I scale to something big? Because in the startup world, the game is about scaling fast. If you want to have venture capital investments, but you can use this process also if you want to, build a company that has smaller ambition than building the next unicorn. Okay. So in this case, what I say is, okay, what happens with a startup? Startups don't have money at the beginning. So this was born exactly with this constraint. So what should I do to grow my product, to grow my sales? And now the interesting thing is that if you want to grow your sales, the answer is, of course, you have to work on campaigns to sell, but you also have to quickly work on your product, because it may happen that despite the fact that you have done a very disciplined process along the way, and you have a good product with a good product market fit, you have to change it and adjust it. So how did all this stuff of growth hacking was born? It was born with a guy, the name is Sean Ellis, and he is a salesman. So at a certain point, this guy was given a product to sell, and he was not selling it. And he realized that, man, I'm not selling it because the product is wrong. So there are these things that are wrong in the product, and we have to adjust it immediately to do it. And he started creating a process of, okay, so let me test if I do this thing, will it increase my sales? If I do these other things, will it increase my sales? And if I do this thing is, if I don't know, create this email campaign, if I change the color of the button, which are two very different things, because changing the color of the button means changing the product, and doing another email campaign is much easier, of course, than changing the product. And then another guy, Balfour, create this loop of this high tempo testing process, which is again quite straightforward. I create a backlog of experiments that I can do, and again we see that it's the process of of the diverge process. No? So we create a great backlog of experiments. We prioritize the experiments based on using certain criteria, and then we create the experiment doc. So we exactly determine which are the things that we need to do to run the experiments. We implement the experiments, we analyze the experiments, the results. So we collect all the information, and then we put into the playbook. That means we have a new process for acquiring or building relationship with customers, or we need to modify these things into the product to get these results. And it's an incremental process. And again, this is much about the emphasis on the wonder part, so in creating this massive backlog of things that you can do, and then on the learning phase. Now, of course, when you do experiments, when you create the experiments, then you go into all the different specialization of digital marketing or marketing. So experiments can be content marketing, email marketing, Facebook advertising, Google advertising, search engine optimization, whatever you do, okay, or product management. So it's very holistic. It's a process to govern marketing and communication. This is a process to govern marketing and communication, having the knowing that you will need to go back and change. You will need to go back and change potentially everything during this process. And this is, of course, very complex to apply in a large organization where things don't work like that. Absolutely don't work like that, even in services, when you have apps and so on, because it's a very complicated process to have something changed on an interface of an app of a bank, because people are not clicking there, they're not seeing that stuff. It's a very complicated process. So the path of a startup generally is around these three Wonderlearn loops and achieving the problem solution fit, the problem market fit, and the business model fit, or the business market fit. So the final point of my presentation is about the market, the technology stack. Now, we all know that technology and marketing has exploded in the last 10 years, okay? So that's the famous marketing technology landscape done by the chief Martech, and it's insane because in every area there are hundreds of possible solutions that you can use, and in every part of the customer journey. So it's very hard. But what you need to do when you start working on a new product, you have to decide your technology stack, and you have to build your own model, because it really depends on what you're building. Sometimes it's easier to gather information, to collect data from the user. Sometimes it's harder. And you have to create your technology stack. If you go on the Chief Martech website, there are tens of these technology stack from companies. I just put here two examples. One of them from this company, AgroLinks. So these are all the technologies that they're using in marketing to create and sell their product. And they call this model the 5C models. It's one of the possible, but this is Delphic. I don't know what they do, and this is their market stack. But what's important is that you do an assessment of what you need for your marketing stack and build your marketing stack in advance, because you have to govern the process of having technology that supports all your learning process. And last point linked to technology in marketing is, which is important if you view it both from the client point of view and from the agency point of view, who's the owner of the data, or who is the one who governs the data? Because most of the time you will need data from your client, and your client is not able to provide you the data, and you will create new data for your client, and your client will not have any idea of how to use the information that you provide, except the fact that you have this deck of information where you demonstrate that you were successful in doing the thing that they paid you for, and that's it, which is a very stupid use of data because you can use it for more interesting things. So this is a very important thing. So as an agency, what's happening now is that more and more companies are trying to adopt this kind of process at every stage. It is more a cultural product than the science product. Of course, with outcomes that are very, very different, because it's a cultural issue. So bringing this kind of process in big corporation is very, very complicated. Most of the time, not very successful. Hopefully, you will work with startups more frequently. So that's the culture that you will find. And probably they will try to govern all the process, and you will do more specific things in this process. I mean, there's not a consolidated way to do this kind of thing. So that's it for now. Thank you.